Hoş geldiniz. Bugün burada hepiniz biliyorsunuz Cynthia Cockburn'le birlikte olacağız ama KASAUM'un 20. yılı ve Kioskileri'nin 3.'sünü düzenlediği Feminist Forum için bir araya geldik. Ben biraz heyecanlıyım, kusura bakmayın. Öncelikle Cynthia Cockburn'u çoğunuz tanıyorsunuzdur ama yine de kısa bir tanıtayım. Cynthia Cockburn savaş karşıtı, işte kadın hareketi, antimilitarizm konularında çalışıyor. Aynı zamanda kendisi de bir aktivist. Ve dün burada Ankara'da birlikte güzel bir atölye yaptık. Ve orada da hem Türkiye ile ilgili son içinden geçtiğimiz süreci tartıştık, hem de neler yapabileceğimizi konuşmaya çalıştık. O tabii bugün bize konuşmasında daha genel bir perspektif çizecek ama sonra soru-cevap bölümünde yine bu tartışmayı da devam ettirebileceğimizi umuyorum. Ben kısaca birkaç kişiye teşekkür edeyim. Öncelikle Cynthia çok hasta, bayağı bir grip. Ona rağmen dün atölyede çok heyecanlı bir şekilde yer aldı, bizimle birlikte çalıştı. Bugün de burada olmaktan çok memnun ama ona teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Bu kadar hastalığına rağmen burada olduğu için, bizimle olduğu için. Aynı zamanda KAOSGL ile birlikte yaptığımız bu etkinlikler için KAOSGL'deki arkadaşların hepsine çok teşekkür ederiz. Dünkü atölyemizde bizimle birlikte olan Barış için Kadın Girişimi Ankara grubundan arkadaşlara çok teşekkür ederiz. Çok güzel bir atölye yaptık birlikte. Avrupa Birliği Delegasyonu bu etkinliği düzenlememiz için bize destek oldu. Onlara teşekkür ediyoruz. Yine Tümbelsen bize dün destek verdi. Ve atölyedeki tüm katılımcılara ve bugün burada olduğunuz için sizlere çok teşekkür ederiz. Umarız çok güzel bir gün geçer.
Sayın izleyiciler, şimdi Cynthia Cockburn sunuşunu izleyeceğiz. Arada PowerPoint sunuşlar olacak. Sonra da serbest tartışmalarımız olacak. Is that working now? Is that good? Yeah. Okay. I want to say first of all a very, very big thank you to everybody who has brought me here to Ankara, the Women's Studies Center, all the work that Ezgi has put into this, and the funders, and also thank you to Professor Serpil Sankar for facilitating me today. And what a wonderful workshop we had yesterday. That was such a privilege to be here. I really, really got a lot out of that. I hope that I can interest you in this. Now, let's switch this off now, if you will. And at a certain moment, I will ask you to put another one on. Okay. Fine. Okay. To talk about gender and militarism in Turkey is what we would call in England carrying coals to Newcastle. Have you heard that expression? Nobody carries coals to Newcastle because they have a lot of coal already. Okay. In Turkey, you have a lot of militarism already, and gender and militarism already, and you don't need to know any more about it. So I am carrying coals to Newcastle. Okay. The work that anti-militarist feminists have done here in Turkey as researchers and writers and activists is well known far beyond the borders of Turkey. Ayşegül Altinay, her wonderful book, The Myth of the Military Nation, is on our bookshelves. We followed the work of Amargi with a lot of admiration, and we were sad to see it close. So I feel very hesitant speaking on this theme here, and I'm really looking forward more to the discussion we can have after the talk, where I can continue to learn from you. Okay, are you hearing all right? Yeah. I thought I would structure my talk in this way. I'm going to start by bringing you some news from the front line, so to speak, specifically from the war in Syria and the aftermath of war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I'm going to be stressing the gender of war from women's perspective. Then I'm going to turn the topic of women on its head and ask, where are men in this study? Because I'm going to suggest that many writers and activists do start in just the way I shall have started. That is, by interpreting gender and militarism as meaning women. And of course they do indeed tell stories that must be heard. But they mostly do not go on to what is equally necessary and confront the issue of men and militarism, men and war, men and power. I'm so happy to see a lot of men in this audience. Didn't expect it, and I'm very pleased. Those who do that, who mention the M word, as we call it in England, men or masculinity or male, are often met with hostile responses. Are you saying all men are violent? Are you saying it's only men who fight? And so on. Or you get a tired, defeatist response. Well, that's how it is. So I'm going to go on in this talk to give a bit of theoretical underpinning that might help us to make the case against the critics and the cynics, convincingly and confidently, to say that gender is not just an effect of war, it is actually causal. It's one of the factors that keeps armed conflict forever on the boil, in which case addressing gender power relations has to be seen as necessary work for peace. Which will lead me to end by asking you and me both about how we can engage more men in actively opposing the militarization of men, and indeed on rewriting the script of masculinity, on which I think you in Turkey have some useful experience. Okay, women and war. I recently spent 5 very, very interesting days in Sarajevo at a conference organized by the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILF for short. It was only 3 weeks ago. The idea of the meeting was that Bosnian women would surely have some useful knowledge to pass on to Syrian women. After all, they survived that terrible war in the 1990s, and they experienced a peace process, and since then have had 20 years of post-conflict experience. Syria, on the other hand, is still in the middle of armed conflict, but they know they need to imagine an end to the fighting and imagine what kind of peace they want when it comes. Sorry, you have to be patient, I'm terrible. Where are we? Right. There were 30 or 40 Bosnian women at the conference. They represented organizations from all over the country. Žena ženama, Udružena žena, Viva žena, you may know these women, and others. Most of them sprang up in the war, or just afterwards. Today I'd say they're part of an organized women's movement in Bosnia. On the Syrian side, 19 women came to the conference, from a range of organizations, including the Syrian Women's League, Women Now, Refugees Not Captives, and Soria. You might know some of these women. Some women came from regime-controlled areas in Syria, some from areas controlled by the opposition. Some had been displaced and were coming now from refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon, and of course Turkey. The immediate spark to this conference, what got it going, was Syrian peace negotiations in Geneva. The first round was in the summer last year, you may remember, Geneva 1. It failed, but it was planned to bring the two sides back to Geneva in the new year, January. WILF and other international NGOs and UN Women have been trying to get these organized women a place in the peace negotiations. Our conference, organized by WILF, was one of many steps in preparing the women for that engagement. This is a classic exercise in implementing UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. The demands they're making are just the kind of thing that resolution was supposed to ensure. A Syrian document was drafted late last year with 5 points. First, they're asking for women to be included in the formal delegations on both sides of the conflict, and not just any women. they are asking that these should be women sensitive to gender issues and committed to equality. Second, they want an independent delegation of women to act as a third party to the talks and represent a diverse and inclusive civil society. Third, they want gender experts and expertise to be present to keep the negotiators on their toes. And four, they want gender briefings to be written and available on every point on the agenda. Finally, and I think this is most important, they want to have a body set up back home in Syria. They're calling it an independent civil society forum of both women and men, so that civil society is consulted in the peacemaking. On the model of the Northern Ireland Peace Agreement of 1998. I don't know if any of you know that, but it was a rather remarkable peace agreement in which civil society and women were included in the discussions. Meantime, also, a coalition of Syrian women's organizations has drafted a constitution. They're very well prepared, these women, right? So far, although between them, UN Women and the international NGOs airlifted in about 60 women, I think it was, to Geneva, those women never got into the talks. They were hammering at the door. Now they're preparing for the third round, Geneva 3. But I want to go back to our Sarajevo conference, which took place just as the second round of peace negotiations was going on. I want to tell you a bit of what the Bosnian and Syrian women were saying to each other and what they told us on the gendered nature of war and post-conflict. Give me a minute. As you know, the Syrian conflict began in 2011 when there was a wave of protests, the Syrian phase of the Arab Spring. It was brutally put down with arrests and beatings. The regime armed Alawites and Shias, aggravating relations with the 60% of the population who are Sunni Muslim. An estimated 100,000 have died now. More than 9 million have been displaced. They're talking about it as the worst humanitarian crisis of modern times. And I'm going to give you a little break now for a few seconds while I just run through some photos that I took at the conference. I thought you'd like to see the women. You have to guess who the Bosnians and who are the Syrians. That's quite good actually, that it's shrunk. She's the Secretary General of Work in Greece. Nawal is the key person in the Syrian Women's League. Lefa, you know, this is Rona Hines from Northern Ireland. She was there. Lefa. It'll run on its own. I'd just like you to see their faces. Okay, that woman on the left with her hand up, I'm going to tell you about her now. Okay, that's the end one. That's Najla. Najla Al-Ki. This is what she told us. And I think it's not so different from the stories other women were telling about their own lives in the conflict. She's now a refugee in Turkey. Najla comes, she says, from the village of Izaz in the extreme north of Syria, not far from Aleppo. It's about 8 kilometers from the Turkish border. But recently Najla, now married with 2 young sons, has been living in Darya, a suburb of Damascus. She's clearly a born activist, and she was one of the first women to join the demonstrations of 2011. Then her husband was seized and detained. She still has no idea where he is. Then her father, a vulnerable and disabled man, was taken when he was walking behind a funeral procession. Najla found out where he was, but she couldn't bear to see him in captivity, wounded, in ragged underwear. She says she submitted to extreme humiliation by his captors to secure her father's release and take him home. Then one night she saw security forces closing in around their home. Dragging her family in their night clothes across the roofs, she slipped out and made her way to the family home in Aleppo, where she had relatives. This was August 2012. Aleppo too was under continual bombardment. When the windows of their home blew in and covered them in glass, they moved on once again, crammed together in a small car, this time to Izaz, the very village where she had begun her life. Held by the Free Syrian Army, the village was shelled now by the regime forces. One night, people were killed in that one village. A barrel bomb smashed their balcony to the ground, carrying her son with it. At first, they told her, he's dead. When I heard that, Najla told me, I all but died myself. Miraculously, he was not dead, but he had been injured, and she decided now the best thing to do was to leave Syria. Taking their car, she drove the children and her brother, picked up her aunt and uncle from a hospital where they were being treated, and they all set off north, with one passport between them, and she smuggled the entire family across the border into your country, and found herself, as she told me, in a place where I didn't even know how to say hi. During all these phases of war affliction, Najla had been caring for the displaced people around her. Now, in the town of Kilis, she set up a small project to empower refugee women, obtaining craft materials, teaching knitting and sewing, and finding a market for their products. She calls her small humanitarian NGO Dignified Women. And it was as a representative of that and of the Syrian non-violence movement, Al-Harak, that she's also a member of, that she applied to attend the Sarajevo conference. Think about Najla for a moment. She's acted in this story as a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a niece. All womanly familial roles. She's termed a victim and a survivor. And she is. But don't say that women do not have agency in wartime. She's an actor. As they told such stories to the Bosnians, the Syrian women often harked back to our revolution of 2011, their moment in the Arab Spring. The street protests had been, they said, a strike for dignity against 40 years of overbearing rule by Assad, father and son. They had been completely non-sectarian. They had opposed all oppressions, the oppression of one religious group by another, of poor by rich, of women by men. Women had been really active and visible. Najla told the Bosnian women, we didn't know what organization was before that. Another woman added, there was no women's movement at that time. We had to be present in the revolution, or not at all. But since war broke out, women's interests have been eclipsed, they said, and their lives have been torn apart. They have new and heavy responsibilities, as we have seen in Najla's case. Now to turn to Bosnia. How do we do? Oh, over there. Is that all right? We could switch it off, actually. To turn to Bosnia, okay? What the women were intent on telling their Syrian partners amounted to warnings. Warnings of what not to do. Things had gone wrong for them. The General Framework Agreement for Peace, signed at Dayton, Ohio in 1995, engineered by internationals, had been an agreement made solely between the male nationalist militarist leaders, without a woman in sight. Their key motive was to stay in power and achieve control over the maximum amount of land and resources. If possible, cleansed of any but their own people. Not only were women and women's interests totally absent from the peacemaking, so was civil society as a whole. Of course, ceasefire was desperately needed. People were prepared to pay almost any price to stop the fighting. But the big mistake was that the peace negotiation at Dayton was actually also allowed to be a moment of country building. It designed a constitution, and a very bad one. I don't need to tell you about it. A country of two ethnically defined entities of almost equal size and power in constant rivalry. 3 presidents, Serb, Croat and Bosniak, each with the power of veto. A far too complex administrative structure of cantons and municipalities, each segment a little ethnic state in its own right. Everybody is defined as a minority with unequal rights in some part of Bosnia. And some people are minorities everywhere, if you don't happen to fit one of those names, or if you're a Roma or a Jew, say. The European Court of Human Rights has condemned the constitution, but there seems no mechanism now for changing it. So the first lesson the Bosnian women pressed on the Syrian women was get in on the peace negotiations. And the second lesson was, whatever happens, don't let the peace negotiations decide the constitution of the state. Nela Porovic told the Syrian women, the space we failed to insist on at Dayton, we have never recovered later. Another theme the Bosnian women stressed was the struggle they've been having for 20 years to get transitional justice, and especially justice for women survivors of war crime. How could the Syrian women prepare now to ensure that war criminals are punished when a post-war government is installed in Syria? As you know, the number of women raped as an integral part of the ethnic aggression and displacement in the Bosnian war is huge. It may be 30,000, it may be twice that. What justice did they receive after the war? Well, the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia was historic in defining rape as a war crime for the first time in world history. But it has tried only the most notorious cases, a tiny proportion of indictable offenders. The judicial system of Bosnia-Herzegovina was left to deal with the remainder, but only 18 cases had so far been heard in the Bosnian court. Even those men eventually convicted have served pretty short sentences, so with remission they come out early and the women that they abuse see them walking in the street. What could be done to prevent this kind of experience in Syria, as and when the guns are silenced? The Syrian women affirm that they are attempting to document crimes, but they say it's very difficult. How do you get death certificates, medical reports, tissue samples in the chaos of war? Tissue samples, they said, I don't even have a fridge to put the food in, let alone tissue sample, this is impractical. But the Bosnian women kept stressing that actually judicial settlement is not the only aspect of what's called transitional justice. There are other things too. For instance, official apologies count for something. Memorialization of places where atrocities were committed. That's psychologically important. Truth commissions may help understanding and healing and acceptance. And reparation, actual compensation, is vital. Payment must be made to survivors for the harms they've suffered, whether it's rendered in money or in support services like health and social care, and free education for children, and a healthy economy. People deserve a livelihood. Okay, so far I've emphasized women's experience and women's agency, but our focus is gender, not just women. Now we need to think about men. Where are they in these stories? The Bosnian War was led and fought predominantly by men. One of their key strategies was the rape of other men's women. Men negotiated the peace and they dominated the post-war state. Does that mean anything? Gorana Mlinarević told us at the conference that although Bosnia is a signatory of CEDAW, its provisions are not respected. Men hold almost all the key positions, and many are getting very, very rich through corruption. It's not surprising if there is more and more criminality, trafficking, enslavement of women and girls in brothels, debt bondage. As for Syria, the women were telling us at the conference that militarization has led to ever deeper masculinization of Syrian society. Who counts in Syria is who wields the weapons. With the reinforcement of masculine authority has come greater misogyny. Religion is more strongly emphasized, partly due to the fact that extremists have entered Syria in support of both sides in the conflict. And that means the male-dominated patriarchal family in an extreme form. There's always been polygamy in Syria, they told me, but today more girls are being sold into early marriage. It's both as a way for families to get desperately needed cash and also supposedly to keep them safe. More and more as the conflict heightens, Syrian society is investing honor in women. It's the old story. Men's weapon of choice for humiliating enemy men is the harassment and humiliation of their women. Rape is more and more common, and it's seen as deeply stigmatizing, so women survivors are silenced. Wearing the hijab has become a norm, and women are penalized if they don't. One young woman told us, it's ever harder to go out of doors without head cover and without a man. These women present in Bosnia were strongly rejecting any hint of sectarianism. They were saying, we're just Syrian, nothing else. Religion, they said, that is the regime's trap for us. If you read the news and listen to TV reports and read policy analyses about the Syrian conflict, you do see the gender story being acted out. But what you don't often hear is the masculinism made explicit and analysed. You'll hear of women's suffering, the plight of women and children. And you'll hear variants on the story of the social forces inflicting it. The Assad regime, the Free Syrian Army, the Islamic Front. But you won't hear the masculinity they embody, the militarized patriarchy talked about and analysed. Except in a small closed circle by a few feminists. In popular culture, there is a kind of blind spot. Now, to come back to the bigger scene, the question of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. I take it that you all know about 1325, passed in the year 2000 by the Security Council on Women, Peace and Security. Getting that through the UN was a huge achievement by the will of women and their allies. It is a valuable instrument. Women all over the world are trying to use it. In Cyprus, they're trying to use it right now. And the women in Syria trying to get access to the Geneva talks. But it had a definite weakness. Felicity Hill and Carol Cohn and others who were involved in steering the resolution through the Security Council at that time are now saying that its text is too much limited to the question of women. Women as victims of war, women's needs, women's strengths and potential for peacemaking. What it says nothing about is men and masculinity in relation to militarism and war. Of course, it was tricky. The women wanted to get their draft accepted. They didn't want to demand too much from the Security Council. But Carol Cohn wondered afterwards if they should have tried harder to press the Security Council to address what she calls, quote, the pernicious, pervasive complexities of the gender regimes that undergird not only individual wars, but the entire war system. The fact is that the United Nations is a flawed and limited institution. It is totally hostage to the USA and global capitalism. And in the same way, it's hostage to patriarchy. It cannot make a critique of men and masculinity as perpetrators of war and war crime. Sandra Whitworth's written about this. She says, quote, "There's no discussion in UN documents," and she's read every UN document, believe me, she's a very thorough person. "There is no discussion in UN documents of militarism or militarized masculinities, or for that matter, of masculinities more generally. Yet the Security Council was set up precisely to reduce militarization and to end war. As I mentioned earlier, when you say gender relations as we live them are among the causes of militarization and war, you get a lot of skeptical and negative responses, including sometimes from women. Some think that you're being anti-man, some think you're being reductive, essentialist, and they'll cite facts to contradict you. Look at all the women joining the military today. You even have female ministers of defence and so on. I think it's important to possess an argument that's capable of convincing skeptics like that. To be able to make a case that war doesn't have just gendered effects. Gender relations are among its causes. So I tried to do this in an article in the International Feminist Journal of Politics. It was, I think, in 2010, about 3 or 4 years ago. I titled it, "Gender Relations as Causal in Militarization and War, a Feminist Standpoint." And I knew that word causal was risky. I knew I was sticking my neck out here. A lot of people were not going to like that. But I thought, and I still think it can be justified, and I'm going to take just a minute now to spell out what I was trying to say. To be clear about it. You might agree, or you might disagree, but I hope you'll tell me afterwards. I want to stress that I didn't just make this up off the top of my head. My work since 1995, and it's almost 20 years, isn't it now, has been among these women I showed you photos of before we started, you know, that string of photos. I've travelled more than 100,000 miles, that's my job, right? To visit and revisit around 30 women's organisations in 12 countries. It's what I've heard these very women say that I have woven into what you might call a theory of gender in relation to war. So I'm going to ask for your patience while I run through this. Now, I have got a PowerPoint to make it a bit quicker. Okay. First, the women I met, for the most part, did not hesitate to call themselves feminist. These are women, right, who are struggling in and against war in one way or another in all these countries that I went to. And their feminism, as I understood it, is a holistic feminism. It's wide in scope. It's socialist feminism, because they can hardly avoid having a critique of capitalism as a cause of war. It's transnational and anti-racist feminism. They see that imperialism, cultural factors, ethnic hatreds are at work in war. It also includes what's sometimes dismissed as liberal feminism. But you need liberal feminism. We need justice and rights. Right? We need those things. It's also radical feminism. It's clear enough that women's bodies, sexuality, are in play in war. It's anti-essentialist, because precisely they believe that gender can be changed. It's a social artifact, otherwise they wouldn't be doing the work they're doing. And their feminism involves a concept of patriarchy. They say, don't talk to me about patriarchy, we live in it. I live in it. The theorists may say you can't use the word patriarchy anymore. But the women say, I live it. I know. I need that word. Okay, the next one, please. Okay. It also seemed to me that these women who are continually either caught up in conflict or supporting others who are, can't afford the rather lofty international relations view of war that diplomats and statesmen can afford. Women tend to look at the detail as they live it, so their perceptions are more like those of a sociologist or an anthropologist. And with those eyes, you see war as relations between human beings. Now that might seem bizarre when it's people killing each other, but war is social, actually. And with a social scientist's eye, you see the messy cultural detail of armed conflict. You see in among the big violence of the guns and the bombs, the little intimate acts of violence. You hear the conversations in the barracks. That's what enables them, feminist anti-militarists, to detect the gender in war, the machismo, the masculine bonding, the misogyny. I also think women who experience violence in peacetime as well as wartime tend to see war as part of a continuum. You've seen how the Bosnian women were seeing it this way. Many have told me how the seeds of war were sown in pre-war Yugoslavia, how the effects of war lived on long after peace is signed. War is a sequence of conditions linked together in time. It's also a spatial continuum, from the rape behind the mud hut, to a city under bombardment, to intercontinental missiles. And it's a continuum of scale. I remember a Colombian woman telling me, we Colombian women are tired of the many kinds of violence, sexual violence, intrafamilial, social, economic, political violence, and armed violence as its maximal expression. So militarization and war, seen as social relations and seen as a continuum, I would suggest that's an approach that enables feminist anti-militarist activists. I would like to think Amargi women would be among them. Enables them more readily to see gender as a relation of power, as a thread running through the whole. And that's where they differ from most male mainstream analysts of war. And I do know about this too, because my last book, I travelled a lot of miles, and I was in Japan and South Korea and other places, and I was talking to men and women in the mixed movements. Okay. We all, yes, understand capitalism, economics, as a perennial cause of war. And yes, we all see nationalism, cultural and racial domination, ethnic hatred, as a perennial cause of war. But they, the mainstream, do not see gender relations as a stimulus to war. That's where feminist anti-militarists differ. How can we convince the others of this gap in their theory of the causation of war? So the next one is the next step in the argument, I think, is to be clear that when we talk about causality, there are more than one kinds of cause or causality. I draw on the work of a guy called Paul Fogarty to suggest that it's useful to distinguish first immediate causes of war, and yes, these are often economic. You know, wars fought for resources like oil, for example. Secondly, there are antecedent causes of war, pre-existing. These might be, for example, ethno-national relations, ambitions, cultural and religious antagonism. I mean, I don't know. Okay, I was going to say something about Kurds and Turkey, but I think I'll leave that for you to say. But there are also what Fogarty calls root causes, or favourable conditions. And these are often cultural factors. And I would suggest that gender relations are best seen as just such a root cause, predisposing societies to be militarist and to war. So when we say gender relations are a cause of war, we're not saying that armies fight each other about gender issues. Rather, that gender relations are disposing our societies to be war-prone. The way we socially shape women and men as complementary and contrasting genders associated with specific values. The way we prioritize masculinity and endow it with authority, with control of women. The way we build manhood around competition, pride, honour and combativeness. All this perpetuates a military mindset, prepares societies to see war as normal, even in some sense as desirable. It's a fulfillment of masculinized national honour and valour. Of course, I need to stress that you can't make the case for gender as a power relation implicated in the perpetuation of militarism and war based on what individual men and women actually do. Ayşe Gül's book showed us how the Turkish education system militarizes little boys. Turkey may be an extreme case, but everywhere there is a practice of constituting boys' masculinity in a way that prepares them for dominating and violent behaviours when they grow up. Of course, it's not certain sure that the culture we live in, even in Turkey or in England, is going to capture and normalise the gender performance of each and every one of us. Some of us escape. Some of us don't match up. We don't do masculinity properly. Some of us actively resist gender norms. I know there have been some gay conscientious objectors in Turkey who have done just that, and therein lies some hope. But no, the case for gender relations being causal in war has to rest not on what individuals do, but on the enduring patriarchal gender relation itself, which over a very long historic period has been a phallocratic relation predicated on coercion and violence. There are quite a lot of dimensions along which power is distributed in the totality of society. One is age. In some societies, older people have a kind of authority. Another is physical ability, obviously. But, and then the next one, good. As far as militarization and war are concerned, it's safe to say that three dimensions of power are the most significant and influential. The first is economic power, the power inherent in accumulated wealth, the wealth of corporations, of individuals and of classes. The second is ethnic or national power, embodied in community, religious and state structures. Thus far, the mainstream male analysts and activists follow our argument. Where we lose them is when we add the third, gender power, patriarchal power. How do we convince them that this too is causal in militarization and war? The next one, Ezgi. I think to do this, we have to use the concept of intersectionality. I almost feel like apologizing for this. I think a lot of you know this word already and are probably fed up to death with it. We feminists have argued for some years now, quite rightly, I think, that we have to understand individuals as not just positioned in relation to one dimension of power, let's say being a woman or being a man in the gender hierarchy. Rather, we need to see her or him as being positioned at the intersection of several power relations. A woman is a woman in an unequal gender regime, but simultaneously she's positioned in regard to unequal relations of class and nationality and race. It's the way these various positionalities intersect and shape each other's influence on her that determines her chances in life, her own relative power or powerlessness. Then, and the next one is I would argue that we just have to take one more step, which is not very often taken. We simply have to say, this intersectionality which we understand working on the individual, on me, on you, we have to look up to the systems of power that are bearing on us, the big systems out there, and see that they are intersected too. They work together. Okay. The power structures of economic class, based on ownership of the means of production, the racializing power of ethno-nationalism expressed in community authorities and states, and the patriarchal sex-gender hierarchy, these are interlocking systems mutually shaping. And the next slide, they have certain similarities. They are all predicated on violence. It's what Charles Tilly called coercion. I like that word, actually. They're all predicated on coercion. Labourers, think back in time to the building of the first canals or pyramids. Labourers won't work unless they're driven by hunger. Foreigners are not going to send you tribute if you don't threaten coercion. And women won't be suppressed, enslaved and commodified without force. Another link, next one, Esky. Another link between these power systems is that they emerged in parallel in the same historic era. During the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, accumulated wealth, the establishment of borders, male gods, male priests, male hierarchies of rule. And it's no accident that institutionalized warfare began historically with these developments. And the last slide, I think it is. Together, these power systems shape human social structures, institutions, and relational processes. Take any one institution. I mean, take the family. The family is an institution, right? You might think that that is quintessential patriarchy, wouldn't you? But if you think about it, the family is also about wealth. It transmits wealth down the generations, or poverty. It's also about ethnicity. It teaches you to be a good little Turk or Serb. And of course, yes, it does shaping its boys and controlling its girls. But it's together, those intersected systems of power in the family, or in any other institution, a capitalist corporation, if you like, a school system, hand down the possibilities and probabilities for each one of us as individuals. No single one of them, class, race or sex, as I see it, produces its effects in the absence of the other two. That's why when it comes to the institution of militarization, it's no different. Patriarchy is right in there with capitalism and nationalism, making our societies prone to war. So then, I want to end with what for me is a puzzle and a problem. If feminists are right in this, why is it not part of the basic understanding in peace movements? Many, many women are active with men in mixed peace movements around the world. But they say, and they've told me this over and again, they say however hard we try, however often we make the case, we just cannot somehow instill in our organizations, in our anti-war movement, the understanding of gender. I can still see the expression of despair on the face of Maki Okada, a friend in Japan, when she said to me, we say it, the men just don't get it. They don't get it. Now, that's one reason a lot of women leave and set up autonomous women's anti-militarist groups, because they're fed up with actually saying it over and over again. Okay, there is one more slide. The deafness to our voices might not matter, except for the fact that everything we've been thinking about today, from women in Bosnia and Syria to theories of patriarchal power, is telling us that lasting peace depends on transforming gender relations. This idea is simply not taking root in the mainstream peace movement. Not in Britain, at least. I could talk to you for hours about the Stop the War Coalition and its shortcomings in this respect, okay? It's only feminists that are saying this at the moment. Now, I want you to tell me it's different in Turkey, okay? Fellas, tell me, please. Okay, thank you very much.
Cynthia'ya çok kapsamlı, çok çarpıcı, çok kafa açıcı konuşması için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Şimdi tartışma için anlamlı bir zamanımız var, soruları alacağız. Yalnız Cynthia'nın bir durma problemi de var. Soruları çok yavaşça alacağız ve Ezgi bir taraftan onları İngilizce yazacak. Görebilmesi için, aynı zamanda bir şeyi kaçırmamak için. Evet, şimdi sorularınızı, katkılarınızı, yorumlarınızı bekliyoruz. Mikrofonlarımız. Evet. Evet, ben elleri görmek istiyorum. Ne kadar bir sorumuz var? 1, 2, 3, 4. Evet, şöyle yani birkaç soru mu birlikte alalım yoksa tek tek mi yapalım? Cynthia onu bize bıraktı. İsterseniz şöyle yapalım. Bir soruyu alalım. Onunla bağlantılı başka soru varsa onları da alalım. 2-3 soru bir arada iletebiliriz. Evet, ben bu taraftan başlamak istiyorum. Bu tarafta var mı? Buyurun siz.
Also, I would like it very much if they debate among themselves. Also,
Yeah,
you know, ask each other questions.
Yeah. Ses gelmiyor.
Merhabalar Zeynep ben. Aslında bir şey sormaktan ziyade bir şeyler eklemek istiyorum. En son onların işte erkek algısından, erkeklerin kadınları anlamadığından bahsettik. Bu konuda aslında şöyle bir araştırma yapmıştım son dönemlerde. İşte erkek algısı bir şeyi doğrudan anlıyor. Kadın algısı ise istediği teferruatı yaysam bile daha çabuk anlayabiliyor. Yani erkeklerin hormonlarıyla alakalı bir durum. Teferruatı kapsayamıyorlar. Şöyle ki yani masanın üzerindeki işte gökkuşağı bayrağının üzerindeki su şişesini bana ver demek yerine su şişesini bana ver diyeceksin. Yani erkeğin dolan başlı bir böyle bir zekası yok. Yani kadın algısı kadar çabuk kavrayamıyormuş.
Biraz ayrımcılık oldu galiba.
Yani bu konu üzerinde erkeklerin kadınları anlamamasını hani yadırgamıyorum açıkçası. Bir sonraki diyeceğim şey de işte pek çok kadın erkeklerle birlikte hareket ediyorlar ve kadın mücadelesinde en başta da kadınlar müdahale ediyorlar. Yani benim en çok kızdığım nokta bu. Şöyle ki yani bir kadın edilmişliği söz konusu, özellikle birçok ülkeye göre belki daha iyidir ama görünmemiş bir ezilmişlik söz konusu. Yani bu durumda kadın iğrenç bir varlık olarak algılanıyor hala. Yani bu durumda da kadın haklarını savunduğun halde bir kadının senin haklarını, kendi haklarını savunmasına tepki gösterecek kadar aşağılanması ayrı bir konu, hiç anlamıyorum. Yani bu konuda kadınların da erkekleştiğinin farkına vardım son dönemlerde ben. Ben bu konu hakkında yani bu algı konusunda birazcık daha değinmesini istiyorum Cynthia'nın. Ve işte bu kadın hareketine, kadınların karşı gelişleri, kadınların ataerkilliğinin nasıl önüne geçilebileceği konusunda birkaç bir şey duymak istiyorum açıkçası.
Evet, teşekkür ederiz. Evet, benzer bir şey varsa şuradan devam edeyim. Peki.
Cynthia biraz önce 100.000 işte milden daha fazla yol yaptığını ve yaklaşık 30 örgütle görüştüğünden bahsetmişti. Acaba bu beraber çalışma fırsatı bulduğu örgütlerdeki feministlerin, işte karma grupların LGBT örgütleriyle ilişkisi var mıydı ya da aktivistleriyle, LGBT'lerle çalışıyorlar mıydı? Nasıl hani böyle bir şeyle karşılaştınız?
Ben de küçük bir soru soracağım hemen. Sesim geliyor sanırım. Şimdi geçen gün 8 Mart'ta bir olay oldu ve onun üzerinden bir soru soracağım aslında. Vicdan reddini açıklamak isteyen kadınlar izin vermedi. 8 Mart Eylem Komitesi ve ilk kez Ankara'da böyle bir müdahale oldu. Vicdan reddini açıklamak isteyen kadınlar tabii şaşırdı aslında, biraz üzüldü de. Hani şimdiye kadar kadınlar çünkü vicdan red ve antimilitarizm konusunda aynı zamanda eşcinseller de diğer antimilitaristlere, diğer kadınlara ve diğer eşcinsellere aslında neden eşcinsellerin de, neden kadınların da antimilitarist olması gerektiğini, vicdan reddi bir araç olarak da kullanabileceğini anlatmaya çalışmıştı. Ama tartışmalar demek ki çok soğumuş. Benim sormak istediğim şey de tam olarak bu. Vicdan reddi bir araç olarak bu coğrafyalarda söylediği, araştırma yaptığı, konuştuğu, görüştüğü coğrafyalarda kadınlar kullanıyor mu? Kullanıyorsa nasıl kullanıyor ve buna yönelik tartışmalar var mı? Ben de bunu merak ediyorum. Teşekkürler.
Ben özellikle
The first speaker, Zainab, mentioned something about hormones predisposing men and women to behave differently. My feeling is that what we have to do is to realise that a huge, an overwhelmingly large part of the social shaping of how we turn out to be men and women is socially shaped. But we are always working on a substrate, a physical substrate, which is always there. However, the scientists who are writing on this subject now are tending to say that we can work also on the body and do work on the body in our social upbringing processes. So, for example, what you feed a person, how much meat you feed a person, will change the testosterone level in the blood and so on. So, I don't think we can go very far down the track of saying that hormones are our problem. I mean, you're saying the problem. But the second question of Zainab was, why do women try to undermine other women and women's movement? I just think we have to realise that we are all constructed in patriarchy. It's a heavy, very, very heavy system in which we've all played our part for generations, and women's part is absolutely central in maintaining it. That is precisely what a feminist movement is to dismantle women's adherence and participation in patriarchy. And the only measure of how we're succeeding is how strong our movement is. Our movement is much more about women than it is about men, actually, in that sense. LGBT activists, well, some are and some aren't. I mean, I don't know if you know the women in Belgrade, but there's a very, very strong alliance there between women in black, Renan, and LGBT activists and movement, and they're out on the street all the time together. Lepa Mladenovic, who you saw on the screen, is a very, very, yeah, she did here, I'm sure she has, a very, very active lesbian. You know, so for me they are kind of model. It's not the same in every country. It's not the same in every country. About women and conscientious objection. This is an interesting one, actually. I think you use that here more than I've heard in other places, because you still have male conscription, don't you? And I would just like to hear more about what women who define themselves as conscientious objectors are objecting to, and how they position themselves with regard to male conscientious objectors. I think that there were women in Spain, you know, when there was conscription in Spain until the late 70s, 80s, a very, very strong CO movement there. And many women were involved, supporting it in one way or another, and some of them did define themselves as conscientious objectors, define a particular act of the state which they refused, like maybe refusing taxes, refusing military taxes. They could define as being a conscientious objection step. Maybe that's what you do here. I would like to know more about it. But one thing I do think is really important is that we should not make equivalent two things that are not equally costly. I think men who refuse conscription pay a very, very high cost. They go to prison very often, they are abused and humiliated very often. It's a very costly thing to do. Women who are not conscripted may pay some kind of price, but it may not be such a heavy price, and I would not wish it to be forgotten, the price that men pay for doing it.
Devam etmek istiyorum.
Benim sorum Suriye ile ilgili de Suriye'deki kadınlardan bahsettiniz Cenevre sürecinde. Bildiğim kadarıyla Cenevre'ye örneğin Rojava'daki Kürt kadınlar ve Suriye'deki Kürtler davet edilmemişti ve yakın zamanda Rojava'da bir özellik ve yeni bir toplumsal düzenin inşası var. Kadınların çok yoğun bir şekilde katıldığı ve bir tür toplumsal cinsiyet meselesi üzerinden politik üreten bir mesele var. Şeyi merak ediyorum ben özel olarak. Diğer kadın örgütlerinin Suriye'deki bu Rojava'daki kadınlarla ilişkilerinin dışında ortaklaşa bir barışı mümkün kılmak için bir etkileşim var mı? Ve Cenevre'ye Kürt kadınları kabul edilmezken diğer kadınlar orada bu ilişkiyi nasıl kurabilirler ve böylesi bir barış nasıl mümkün?
Rojava. I have to say that the women who came from Syria to the meeting in Sarajevo, it was very, very interesting because there was quite a lot of tension between the groups. There was a big age and style difference in the kinds of feminism. The Syrian Women's League, for example, is rather venerable. It used to be the Communist Party's Women's Wing, for example. And it's, you know, and some of the younger women might have thought, well, if they've survived so long under Assad, you know, maybe they've compromised them. Some of the younger women, some of the women were actually suspicious of the word reconciliation, for example, because they want victory, you know. So actually, the Syrian women had to make a big effort to work together with each other over those 5 days, as well as to work with the Bosnians. Now, the question of Rojava, I was disappointed because I'm actually especially interested in the Kurdish story, and I had hoped that I might meet a distinctive group at Sarajevo from Rojava, and I didn't. I had a language problem, mind you, and you know, I didn't learn everything there was to learn. But I don't think that there was a distinctive group from Rojava there. I've heard it indirectly some of the things you're saying, you know, that they are active and things are on the move. But I would really love to know more from you what connection you may have had with Rojava.
Evet, taraftan devam edelim. Buyurun siz. Açar mısın?
I have to say, just to say more about that question, how the women were chosen to come from Syria. It was by open application. So there were 2 preliminary meetings held in Lebanon for Syrian women by Wilf in the autumn, in October. You know, 20 or 30 women came to each of those 2 meetings to prepare the ground and inform so that news would be taken back to Syria and to the refugee camps. And then the individual groups put forward a proposal on a form. We want to attend the Sarajevo conference. And I don't know whether a group from Rojava actually applied.
Cynthia güzel sunumun için teşekkür ederim önce. Adım Doğuş Kıbrıs'tan geliyorum. Birleşmiş Milletler Güvenlik Konseyi'nin 1325 sayılı kararından ve bunun Suriye'de özellikle Women's International League for Peace and Freedom'la beraber bir koalisyon girişimiyle yürürlüğe girme çalışmalarından bahsetti. Biz de Kıbrıs'ta 2009'dan beridir 1325'in özellikle müzakere sürecine kadınların ve toplumsal cinsiyet bakış açısının dahil edilmesi için uğraşıyoruz. Fakat gerek 1325, gerek AKB'de Güvenlik Konseyi'nin aldığı 1820, 1888, 1889 ve en sonunda 1960 sayılı kararlar daha çok cinsel şiddet üzerinden gidiyor. Oysa 1325 aynı zamanda participation, prevention, yani katılım, koruma, protection ve prevention, engellemeyi de öngörüyordu. 13.25'in implementation açısından kadın hareketinin elini kuvvetlendirecek mekanizmaları yok. Biz bunun eksikliğini hissediyoruz. Üretilen birçok öneri aslında erkeklerin müzakere süreçlerini, barış sürecini elinde tutan erkeklerin engeline takılıyor. Uygulamada bizim karşılaştığımız bu sorun mesela Suriye'deki kadınların bir sorunu mu diye merak ediyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
I think 1325 is very problematic. There are people in every country who are really struggling to make it work, and I know in Cyprus for years they've been trying to use it to get women to get a foot in the door in the peace process in Cyprus. But sorry, hang on. What was I going to say? Yeah. I think that the problem with it is, one of the main problems is that the institutions like, say, the British state or NATO, I'm thinking of NATO particularly, I made a little study of what NATO does with 1325, and it shocked me, it really did, because the Secretary General of NATO must have made 25 speeches a year for the last 5 years, praising 1325 and saying, you know, this is just what NATO needs, and using it essentially to get more women into NATO's militaries, you know, saying we must have more equality in the military. And, you know, it just makes you sick to see what was meant to be our own resolution, which we aspired to be anti-militarist, you know, being just corrupted like that. So I think it has a lot of weaknesses in it. But there are, at the same time, I'm not an expert on it, and there's a lot being written and done about it at the moment, so trying to make use of it. Yeah, prevented or used by men, corrupted by the military men who want to use it as a question of equality for women in the military. And are the Syrian women aware of it? Yes, I think so. But you've still got to use it. That's the trouble. You know, you've got to use what you've got. So it's not. And I suppose also it may be that because UN Women is instrumental in getting the women to the process in Geneva, it's not just international NGOs like WOLF, it's UN Women as well. And UN Women really are part of the system. So I think it's correct to say that they are less critical of 1325. Than the NGOs.
Evet, böyle devam edeyim. Mikrofon rica ederim. Konuşulmayan mikrofonları kapatırsak burada patlama yapıyor çünkü ses.
Öncelikle şunu söylemek istiyorum. Sizinle burada bir arada olmak çok güzel bir şey. Ya, enerjinizi hissedebiliyorum. Az önce konuştuklarım duyuldu mu?
Evet.
Ben size şöyle bir şeyden bahsetmek istiyorum. Biz engelli kadınlarla alakalı çalışmalar yapıyoruz burada. Yani çok yeni bir hareket aslında Türkiye'de. 2011 yılında hani bir sivil toplum örgütü olarak kuruldu, Engelli Kadın Derneği olarak. Fakat ben geçen yıldan beri bu hareketin içerisindeyim. Aynı zamanda LGBT hareketi içerisinde de yer alıyorum. Şöyle söyleyeyim, engelli kadınlarla ilgili biz de toplumsal cinsiyet ayrımcılık çalışmaları yapıyoruz. Çok heyecanlıyım, özür dilerim. Bu toplumsal cinsiyet çalışmalarında falan şunu görüyoruz, yani engelli kadınlar özellikle ayrımcılık ve toplumsal cinsiyet çalışmalarında, çünkü ayrımcılıkta da hani ırksal ayrımcılıktan da bahsediyoruz. Ya da inanç ayrımcılığından. Hani engelli kadınlarda da şunu görüyoruz, yani aslında toplumun diğer kesimlerinde olduğu gibi hani devletin onlar üzerinde uyguladığı bir militaristleştirme anlayışını görüyoruz. Yani onlara bu militarist anlayış aşılanmış ve hani yani hani barış hareketini, işte savaş karşıtlığını, bunları çok anlatamıyoruz, yani anlatmakta zorluk çekiyoruz. Hani nasıl anlatayım, yani yurt dışında engelli kadınlarla ilgili bir çalışma, yani daha doğrusu hani bu tarz yani topluluklar var mı, ya da siz bu tarz bir çalışma yaptınız mı? Yani hani bununla alakalı ne düşünürsünüz? Hani bu militarist anlayışın zaten kadınların geneline yaygınlaştırıldığı çok gerçek bir şey. Ama hani siz bununla alakalı neler yaptınız, bunu öğrenmek istiyorum. Teşekkürler.
Teşekkür ederiz.
No, I don't. I wish I did. I think that it is a very important thing. One reason that it would be very important is that militarism and militarization fetishizes, not only prioritizes, but fetishizes strength and fitness, and consequently should be subject to very heavy critique by anybody, by disabled people and their allies. So I would like to know more about your organisation and also anything that might be going on in other countries. Yeah, no, I really don't think I can recall having that one.
Evet, Çiğdem'i görüyorum oradan.
Aslında benim sorum arkadaşın sorusuyla çok bağlantılı olacak. 13.25'ten sonra gelen kararlar aslında 13.25'in yetersizliğinden dolayı Kongo, Sri Lanka, Sierra Leone'de artan kadın tecavüzleri üzerine gelen acil cinsel şiddeti önleme ve tecavüz amaçlı yasalardı. Ancak geçen sene 2012'nin sonu veya 2013'ün başlarındaydı. İnsan Hakları İzleme Örgütü bir rapor yayınladı Suriye ile ilgili ve Suriye'deki cinsel şiddet vakalarında ortaya çıkan tablo gerçekten çarpıcı. Çünkü o metinde göz önüne çıkan, göze gelen şey erkek tecavüzleriydi. Gözaltına alınan ve işgal altındaki yerlere, baskınlarda acayip derecede korkunç, dehşet biçimlerde erkek tecavüzleri rastlayabiliyorsunuz ifadelerde. Bu itiraflar vardı. Dolayısıyla aslında 13.25'ten sonraki, 13.25'te aslında alınmasında en büyük hatlardan biri olan, en büyük desteklerden biri olan Uluslararası Kadın Barış Örgütü'nün bu konuda tam da bu toplantıyı yaptığı sırada özellikle bunu göz önüne alarak, erkek tecavüzlerini ve erkeklere yönelik cinsel şiddeti göz önüne alarak yeniden bir karar aşamasına, yeniden bir metin hazırlama aşaması söz konusu. Bunu merak ediyorum, öğrenmek istiyorum.
Who is raping the men? Women? I think that it is a very important issue. I sympathise with what you're saying. But my reaction is like that because in England, I just speak from where I come from, okay? We are enormously frustrated by the way that issues are continually diverted by this device of saying that men are victims. Men are victims. Men are incredibly victimized by patriarchy. Incredibly victimized by patriarchy. What I would really like to do is to have some sense from you as to whether, I mean, what I'm just saying is that my dream is to be in a peace movement of men and women in which men are saying patriarchy is exceedingly bad for men, just as it is exceedingly bad for women, and it is causal in war. And my actions and everything that I do will be opposing patriarchy. My methodologies of struggle, my analysis of struggle. Okay, isn't that happening in Turkey? Can I go home with the story of some wonderful organisation that's doing this? Because I really need that story to tell.
Evet, devam ediyoruz. Evet, Sinan.
Teşekkürler. Aslında biraz dikkatleri salona çekmek istiyorum. Şimdi bu salonun duvarlarında biyolojik olarak erkek sandığımız 3 kişinin fotoğrafı var. Ve birisinin arkasında da üniformalı bir asker dimdik duruyor. Elinde muhtemelen silah da vardır. Yani bizim etrafımızda dönüyor olay. Aslında çok sert bir soru sordunuz, bizim yüzümüze çarptı. Türkiye Kadın Hareketi'nin Rojava Kadın Hareketi'nden ne kadar haberi var? Ben de bu soruyu tekrar etmek istiyorum.
Peki devam edip soru almaya. Okuyunca.
Merhaba. Mikrofonu kalktı.
Telefon nerede ben görmüyorum. Kaldırabilir mi? Evet.
Aslında hayretler içerisinde dinledim. Bunu bir eleştiri olarak sunuyorum. Beklentilerim biraz farklıydı açıkçası bu oturumdan. Kürdistan'dan geldim, Kuzey Kürdistan'dan. Kürt Kadın Hareketi içerisinde yer alıyorum. Onunla bağlantılı olarak soracağım. Türkiye'nin Rojava üzerindeki ambargosuna bir defa hiç değinilmedi ve Suriye sorunu tartışılıyorsa eğer burada, ki Suriye'deki kadın hareketleri tartışılıyorsa Rojava'nın kesinlikle tartışılması gerekiyor. Kürt meselesiyle bu kadar yakından ilgili bir araştırmacının Rojava'ya bu kadar uzak olması beni şaşırttı. Çünkü biz ilişki halindeyiz sürekli Rojava'daki kadınlarla ve sadece 2013'te 1179 kadın erkek ve devlet şiddetine maruz kaldı. Özel hayatları yağmalandı. Tecavüz Türkiye'ye gelmek istediklerinde 12 saat gözaltında bırakıldılar. Agresyonsuz bırakıldılar. Bunların hepsi gerçek. 2 hafta önce olan şeyler ve buna değinilmemesi beni gerçekten üzdü bir kadın olarak ve Türkiye'nin Rojava politikalarına değinilmemesi daha fazla rahatsız etti. Çünkü Rojava'da yaşayan kadınlar Türkiye'de ikinci eş olarak satılıyor. Yani tam olarak kavram bu. Hepimizi aynı derecede rahatsız ediyor olabilir. Fakat bu ya da eşyalarına, mülklerine el konuluyor bu kadınların ve bunlara hiç değinmedi. Hele Rojava'ya kadın devrimi diyoruz. Böyle muazzam bir şey varken Orta Doğu'da bunu bir eksiklik olarak alması biz kadınları rahatsız etti ve Kürdistan'a da davet ediyoruz kendisini Rojava deneyimlerimizi aktarmak için. Teşekkür ederim.
Okay, I admit that I don't know nearly enough about it. I'm not a specialist in Kurdish issues. I read as much as I can, but I'm not a specialist in it at all. And I probably have a blind spot. So when it came to the meeting between the Syrians and the Bosnians, I think that I was not sufficiently alert to be asking the right questions. But I was there as an observer rather than a participant. So I really have no more to say on that. I would love to hear others have something to say.
Evet, devam edelim. Evet, tamam. Gördüm. Sen de tamam, Ali ile devam ederiz. Sonra.
Ben son sorulardan hareketle bir şeyler söylemek istiyorum ama biraz da aslında çekiniyorum. Umarım beni yanlış anlamazlar. Sanki işte son sorulardan hareketle sözlerime başlayacağım için bir reaksiyon gibi algılamazlar diye düşünüyorum. Geçmişi de olan bir şey olduğunu düşünüyorum söyleyeceklerimin. Feministler ya da kadınlar hareket içinde birbirleriyle kurdukları yatay dil ve diyalog, dikey düzlemde patriarkanın politik unsurlarıyla ve devlet güçleriyle kurdukları dil ve diyaloğun farklı olması gerektiğini ve hali hazırdaki koşullarımız ne olursa olsun bunun farklı olabileceğini düşünüyorum ve ben buna politik olarak da inanıyorum. Dolayısıyla bizim yatay düzlemde birbirimizle kuracağımız dil ve diyalog bu üsluptan yorulmadık mı? Yani birbirimizin eksikliklerini yapıcı bir şekilde tamamlamak için arkadaşım, yoldaşım, işte LGBT dostum ya da feminist dostum, işin bir de şu yönü var diye cümleye başlamak örneğin daha yapıcı, daha dönüştürücü olmaz mı diye düşünüyorum. Ve biz 20 yıldır LGBT hareketi olarak aslında böyle bir dil, böyle bir yöntemle sözümüzü dolaşıma sokmaya çalıştık. Bu bizim aczimizden kaynaklanmıyordu. Çünkü biz şunu diyorduk, bizim fethedeceğimiz bir iktidar yok. Biz heteroseksiz sömürgeci güçlere, devlete karşı asla geri adım atmayacağız. Ama ne kadar homofobik olursa olsun, feministlerle kurduğumuz dilde, Kürtlerle kurduğumuz dilde, Alevilerle ve toplumun diğer kesimleriyle kurduğumuz dilde, oradaki kesimler, oradaki insanlar ne kadar homofobik olursa olsun biz hep anlatacağız, kendi sözümüzü katacağız ve birlikte dönüşmek, birlikte özgürleşmek için aslında katkı sunacağız diye çabaladık. Diğer türlüsünün yani işte şunu da unuttun, bunu da unuttun tarzı bir dilin çok yorucu, çok yıpratıcı olduğunu düşünüyorum ben kendi adıma. Şimdi bir iki cümle ben yani son iki soru soran arkadaşımdan hareketle sözüme başlamışım gibi olduğu için bu alkışları yani kendi adıma almak istemem. Çünkü o arkadaşlarımın sözlerine de birebir katıldığımı parantez içinde belirtmek isterim. Bu yılın başında barış süreci ilan edildi. İki taraf açısından da kamuoyuna ilan edildi. Biz yani bir KASAUM'un örgütü olarak eti budu belli bir örgüt olarak da en baştan sürece dahil olduk. Nasıl dahil olduk? Homofobi karşıtı buluşmada, Uluslararası Feminist Forum'da, ayrımcılığa karşı sempozyumlarda yıl boyunca yaptığımız bütün etkinliklerin ana temasına barış sürecini dahil edecek bir formül bulduk. Daha geçen seneki 2. Uluslararası Feminist Forum'da KASAUM'un olarak şunu yaptık. Türkiye'de ve Kürdistan'da yaşanan sorunların Mezopotamya ve Anadolu'ya dair özgür yönleri olsa bile aslında orijinal bir yönü yok. Benzer sorunların tamamı misal Bosna ve Sırp Savaşı döneminde yaşandı. Dolayısıyla biz pek çok katkıyla birlikte adı geçen arkadaşımız Lepa Sırbistan'dan Uluslararası Feminist Forum'a geldi. Yine Türkiye'de ve Kürdistan'dan kadın arkadaşlarımız geldi. Örneğin Nusaybin Belediye Başkanı geldi ve biz şunu yaptık. Türkiye'deki Kürdüyle, Türküyle, feministler ve lezbiyen, gay, biseksüel ve trans insanlar bu meseleye nasıl dahil olabiliriz? Aramızdaki yabancılaşma mesafesini en aza nasıl indirebiliriz diye konuştuk. Yine adı geçen Rojava'yı olanaklarımız ölçüsünde en başından beri takip ediyoruz. En son Ankara'ya Rojava'dan PYD eş başkanı Asya Abdullah geldi ve KASAUM'un olarak biz Asya Abdullah'la doğrudan diyalog kurduk. Ama Rojava'da her ne kadar bir kadın devriminden bahsedilse bile cinsiyetçiliğin dışında aynı zamanda zorunlu heteroseksüelliğe karşı bir mücadele de verilmesi gerektiği konusundaki diyalogumuz ve sorularımızın karşılığının olmadığını gördük. En küçük olumsuz bir cümle kurmadık. En küçük olumsuz bir cümleyi dolaşıma sokmadık. Bu çok normal. Yani Rojava'da orada yerelden, tabandan özel bir mücadele yükselirken bu mücadelenin aynı zamanda heteroseksizme karşı da bir mücadeleyi barındırması gerektiği şu an orada kuvvete fiili çıkmamış olabilir. Ama bunu negatif olarak eleştirmek yerine pozitif olarak acaba biz nasıl yoldaşça bir katkıda bulunabiliriz diye diyalog kurmayı tercih ettik. son cümle. Dolayısıyla feministlerin kendi arasında ya da feministlerle LGBT'ler arasında ya da Türk ve Kürt feministler ve LGBT arasındaki diyaloğun da böyle olursa birbirimize katkı yapabileceğini ve birbirimizi dönüştürebileceğini düşünüyorum.
Teşekkürler yorum için. Türkler, feministler ve LGBT aktivistleri arasındaki dil konusunda önerilerine herhalde TUSAM'a katılıyor müştenlikle. Cynthia bir cevap vermek istiyor bilmiyorum. Devam edebiliriz sorulara. Evet, sizin sözünüzü aldık. Buyurun, devam ediyoruz. Sonra yukarıdan arkadaşlar devam ediyoruz.
Ben birçok dünyada kadın örgütüyle ilişki kurmuş birisi olarak şu soruyu sormak istiyorum kendisine. Eğer bir genelleme yapacak olursak bu örgütlerdeki dışsal bir sebep olmaksızın kadınların kendi içerisinde yaşadığı kırılma noktaları neydi? Bir genelleme yapacak olursak. Yani sosyolojik ya da siyasal bağlantılar olmaksızın sadece o örgütlerin içsel sorunlarından bahsediyorum.
That is such a very big question. So many organisations break up and die over time. I can only speak from personal experience, and I don't think there's any way to generalise. But I think that one thing that happens very often is that our methodology of relationship and organisation is not sufficiently skilled and careful to enable the inevitable conflicts that arise. Very often, by the time we learn that our methods are not working, it's too late. I think that there are certain big issues in England which divide women's organisations at the moment, which are not to do with that, to do with the methodology of relating. One, for example, I would say is very, very divisive in radical feminist organisations at the moment, and that is the issue of prostitution. I don't know whether you have that divide here. There are some organisations that believe that prostitution should be illegalised, and others that believe that sex workers should be termed sex workers, not prostitutes, and they should be organised and supported in their work. That has been a breaking point for several organisations. That's all I can say from my own experience.
Teşekkür ederim. Ben Ali söyledi, o yüzden o noktada şöyle devam edeceğim. Tabii uğraştığımız şeyler çok sert olduğu için ataerkillikle, savaşla vesaire uğraşmak ister istemez dilimiz de sertleşiyor ve bazen o sertlik içinde daha sert söylediğinde daha siyasi olduğumuzu düşünüyoruz. Bu bence bir yandan çok anlaşılır bir çığlık ama barışın dilini de kuracaksak da bize hep geriye düşüren bir yanı var. O yüzden içerik kadar üslubun da dönüştürücü olduğunu, örücü olduğunu düşünüyorum bir. İkincisi de çok küçük adımlar, biliyorum yaygınlaşmadı ama Cynthia da bunu kayıt altına almak ister çünkü ilgilendiğini biliyorum. Ve bu dayanışmaları önemsiyorum açıkçası. Küçük küçük erkek grupları var. Pipa Bak öldürüldüğünde İstanbul'da çıktılar, biz erkek değiliz diye, işte tecavüze, ayrımcılığa karşıyız diye. Sonra rahatsız erkekler grubu oldu. Şimdi ataerkiye karşı erkekler, en son ben öğrencilerimle buluşturabildim onları. Bir araya geliyorlar, çalışıyorlar. Daha bir yaygınlık yok ama uğraşılıyor. Bu da şunun için önemli. Eğer ilişkilenerek dönüştürmenin adımlarını geliştiremezsek orada da yine bazılarımız çok farkında ve bilerek gidiyor. Diğerlerinin neden bahsettiğini bilmiyor. Halbuki toplumsal bir arada öğrenerek gelişecek bir süreç. Onun da yani çok küçük ama bence kıymetli. Bir kısmı da zaten bütün o hani Masculinities Journal'ın çevresinde vesaire şu anda ilişkilenmiş erkekler. Hem LGBT yeni hareketler ama hem de heteroseksüel erkekler. Teşekkür ederim.
Evet, küçük küçük erkek örgütlenmeleri var ve hızla gelişiyor gerçekten. Çok önemli bu süreçte. Cynthia
organisation here called White Ribbon, a men's organisation. It exists in several countries that I know of, we have I have great respect for them. They are a male organisation, men only, and their purpose is to organise men to resist specifically male violence against women. So they're not just talking about violence against women, they're talking about male violence against women, and they engage each other in a commitment to resist any talk about such things in pubs or wherever they hear it. Now that organisation is tactful and helpful in regard to women's campaigns and organisations. For example, when we have our Reclaim the Night march on November 25th, White Ribbon know that they would not be welcome on the march, which is a women-only march, but they stand beside the route in a symbolically significant place, and they carry placards which say, "Men say no to male violence against women." And we all consider that very constructive. So they are a hopeful thing, in my experience, but that does not exist in the peace movement, as far as I know. And since my life and work is in peace movements, anti-militarist, anti-war movements, that's where I'm looking for it. That's where why I'm asking whether you have it here.
Sanatı görmediğim söylendi. Gidip bakıyorum, var burada. Yok. Var mı? Kısmet sen mi? Elimi görmüyorum.
Kürsüden göremezsin ki. Kürsü biraz ataerkil kürsü. Şimdi bir soru sorulmuştu. Kadınlarla erkeklerin birlikte barışı örgütledikleri bir örgüt var mı Türkiye'de? Evet, Barış Meclisi var. Ama Barış Meclisi'nde yine erkek ağırlıklı bir Barış Meclisi var. Doğru söyleyecektim. Bir de bir soru sormak istiyorum. Şimdi seks işçisi denildiğinde mevcut durumu ifade ediyor ama acaba bir yandan da kapitalizmin her türlü değeri ve insan bedelini meta aracı gören anlayışını meşrulaştırmıyor mu? Bu konuda biraz açıklık getirirse memnun olurum.
Yes, I'm not taking a position on sex work and prostitution. I don't take a position on it in England either because I don't know any prostitutes and or sex workers. Personally, I don't work with them, and I don't think it's for me to have a view on that. It has been tearing the women's movement apart, but it's not an area of the women's movement that I'm intimately involved in. So I don't think that's just copping out. I think it's reasonable. I think that there's a case for not speaking about something you don't know about. What were we also talking about? Oh right, no, you mentioned the Peace Assembly. You mentioned the Peace Assembly, which you said is male-dominated. But does it have a gender analysis? Does it have an anti-patriarchal analysis? Is that part of its campaigning and work to deconstruct conventional gender forms?
Ben buradan almaya devam edeyim.
Siz alabiliyor musunuz?
Bir dakika bekler.
No, I just wondered whether the men in the Peace Assembly are known for taking responsibility about their own masculine relationship to the military and so on, and whether this is written about I would really like to read anything that is coming out of the Peace Assembly if they are doing this kind of work, because we need it.
Türkiye Barış Meclisi İzmir girişimcilerinden biriyim. Barış Meclisi'nin Türkiye geneli zaten savaş karşıtı bir söylemi var. Türkiye'de barışın örülmesi için barış annelerinin de yer aldığı, yani erkek sayımız evet çok fazla, yani erkek oranımız fazla ama kadın hakları savunuculuğundan tutun da barışı örmede kadının ön planda olması, kadının Kürt özgürlük mücadelesinde özellikle Türkçü kadınların yanında yer aldığı deklarasyonlarımız var, beyanlarımız var, artı sokak ayaklarımız var. Ötekileştirmeyen bir tavrı var Barış Meclisi'nin. Ne kadını, evet erkeklerin de bu mücadelede bizimle beraber yürüdüğünü bildiğim için söylüyorum. Deklarasyonlarımız var bu konuda, eylemliliklerimiz var bu konuda. O yüzden yanlış anlaşılmasını istemiyorum Barış Meclisi'nin. Onurla arkasında durduğum örgütlerine. Teşekkür ederim.
Türkiye'de feminist hareket ve sol hareket biraz ahlakçı bir yanı olduğunu düşünüyorum. Ve hala bu geleneği kırmadılar. Seksistçi bir dünyada olduğu gibi Türkiye'de de var. Ve dünyada sendika hareketiyle beraber gündemdeyken Türkiye'de de bayağı bir örgütlü durumdayız. Seksistçileri vardır. Kadınlar neden bundan bu kadar korkuyor bilmiyorum ama kadınlar ve ahlakçılar bundan neden korkuyor bu kadar bilmiyorum ama seksistçiliği vardır hani. Bunu anlatmaya çalışıyorum ve arkadaşlarım haklarının düzeltilmesi ve bence seksistçiliğin ve feminizm hareketinin ve sol hareketin alıp haklarının ve yaşam alanının düzeltilmesi için çalışmalar yapılması gerekirken hala seksistçiliği var mı argümanını kurmayı anlayamıyorum. Ahlakçı bir yerden olduğunu düşünüyorum.
Evet, yorum için teşekkür ederiz. Şimdi saat 12 yaptık. Ben kaç soru daha var bunu görmek istiyorum. Ne kadar?
Ben seks işçileri var mı demedim. Seks işçiliği vardır. Gerçektir ama kapitalizmin her türlü değeri meta aracı görmesi anlayışıyla ilişkisi nedir? Açıklanmasını istedim.
Maden işçiliğinden farkını açıklayın siz de lütfen o zaman. Rencide ediyorsunuz şu anda.
Rencide olarak demiyorum ben. Kapitalizm...
Argelik mesela kapitalizmin parçası değil midir? Maden işçiliği kapitalizmin parçası değil midir? Sanki her şey kapitalizmden çıktı. Her şeyi bir tarafımızda bir kaslar kaldı. Bir kaslarımız özgürleşti de orası tutsak kalmadı. Her yerimiz tutsak şu anda. Herkes için mücadele.
Arkadaşım açıklayın işte biz de
açıklayın. Siz anlayın. Biz açıklamayacağız. Siz anlayın artık. Bizim açıklayacak
Evet arkadaşlar, karşılıklı diyalog keyifli. Yalnız sesimizi kontrol edelim. Sesimizi kontrol edelim. Son, siz de var. Son iki o zaman. Lütfen.
Ben de umarım karşılıklı konuşmaya dönmez ama şöyle bir açıklama yapmak.
Yani karşılıklı konuşmaya sorunumuz yok.
Yükümlülüğünden hissettim kendimi. Ben Barış Meclisi Sekreteryası'nda yer alıyorum. Gerçekten sayımız yani az Barış Meclisi'nde. Barış Meclisi'nin birçok çalışmasının Türkiye'nin yaşadığı süreçte de çok önemli olduğunu düşünüyorum. Ama Barış Meclisi'nin bir ataerkil toplumsal cinsiyet ilişkilerini sorgulayan bir yerden çalışmadığını çok iyi biliyorum. Bu bir eksiklik. Bunu Barış Meclisi'nin her düzeydeki çalışmalarına yansıtmak mutlaka gerekli. Biraz bu yüzden de ben Barış Meclisi Sekreteryası'nda yer almayı önemli buldum. Ama hani bunu başarmak diğer her yerde olduğu gibi burada da zor. Bunun böyle bilinmesi gerekir bence.
Teşekkür ederiz. Hadi orada bir tane alalım. Ondan sonra
Teşekkürler.
doğru görüyorsan.
Evet, teşekkürler Cynthia'nın güzel sunuşu için. Gerçekten provoke etti bizi. Zaten de hazırız.
İyi oldu.
İyi oldu. Biraz uzun sürebilir bu sorunu. Kendisini kısa tutmaya çalışacağım ama cevap da öyle. O yüzden bir sunum teklifi ediyormuş gibi algılanabilirim. Şimdiden özür diliyorum. Ama benim sorum şöyle. Cynthia'nın bu causality yani sebep olarak ifade etti. Yani ataerkilliği, patriarkayı, işte toplumsal cinsiyet normlarını basit bir giysi ya da bir motif, bir etki gibi olmanın ötesinde bizzat sebep olarak algılamamız gerektiği vurgusu çok önemli bence. Çünkü bütün feminist metodolojinin, söylemin yeniden gözden geçirilmesi gerektiriyor aslında diye düşünüyorum. Çünkü genel olarak hani savaş ve barış ve kadın ya da toplumsal cinsiyet, aslında daha çok biz kadın vurguluyoruz, toplumsal cinsiyet de demiyoruz, bu da önemli bir katkı. Bu bağlamda konuştuğumuzda hep kadının mağduriyetini vurguluyoruz. Kadın çok etkileniyor diyoruz, ekstra etkileniyor diyoruz, şöyle etkileniyor, böyle etkileniyor. Neyin etkilediği ve nasıl etkilediği bence feminist söylem çok ihmal ediyor. Böyle baktığımızda dilimizi değiştirdiğimiz gibi yöntemimizin de sanki değiştirilmesi gerekiyormuş gibi geliyor bana. Bu bakımdan neler öneriyor? Yani sonuç bu nedensellik bizi ne yönde değişim arayışına götürmeli? Feminist örgütleri, söylemleri ve stratejileri bakımından. Bir bu. Bir de aynı şekilde söylemi değiştirirken, biz yeniden feminizmin dilini yeniden kurarken, özellikle bu savaş konusu olunca çok derin konflikler, çatışmalar üzerine kurulu bir mücadele alanını işaret ediyoruz. Etnik olabiliyor, dini olabiliyor. Ayrışmalar yani kadınların arasında ayrışmalar, kadınların ya da topluluklar arasındaki ayrışmaların çok derin yaşandığı tarihçeler üzerine kurulu bir mücadele alanına işaret ediyoruz. Bu konuda da ne öneriliyor? Mesela ne yapıyor feminist organizasyonlar? Gidip hikaye mi topluyorlar? Kadınlar arası buluşmalar mı düzenliyorlar? Bunları aşmak, yeniden bir barış kültürü geliştirmek için çok uzun bir cevabı olan sorular sorduğum farkındayım.
Temel soruları sona bırakmışız.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Cynthia'dan rica ederim tekrar. Bir soru daha herhalde eklemekte yarar var. Bir soru daha ekliyorum ona. Son sorular arkadaşlar. Buyurun.
Ben de çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum Cynthia'ya sunumu için. Konu biraz barış meclisinden başka bir yere gelecek ama şunu merak ediyorum ve belki sorgulamamız gerektiğini düşünüyorum. Biz militarizmin, kapitalizmin, ataerkinin bizi nasıl biçimlendirdiğini hep konuşuyoruz. Ama bu konuşmayı yaparken bazen yine militarizmin, kapitalizmin ve ataerkinin bizden neler çaldığını, çok maddi şeylerden söz ediyorum ve bu maddi çaldıklarının hayatlarımızı nasıl başka biçimlerde etkilediğini, en basitinden sınıfsal olarak hayatlarımızı nasıl birbirinden ayırdığını ve birbirimize duyamaz hale getirdiğini söylemeyi ihmal ediyoruz diye düşünüyorum ve bunun, yani bu ayrışmanın da aslında barışın diline zarar veren bir şey olmaya başladığını ya da barışın diline zarar verdiğini yine düşünüyorum. Bu noktada belki sadece hani o barış anlaşmalarındaki liberal dilin ötesinde daha sosyal bir yerden, daha ekonomik bir yerden de bizi destekleyecek, hem kadınları hem erkekleri destekleyecek ve barışın diline yardımcı olacak. İşte militarizm bizden neler çalıyor? Hani bunu da ayrıca bir tartışmaya açmalıyız diye düşünüyorum. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Evet, başka soru yok herhalde. Son sözü Cynthia'ya.
Goodness, I don't think I can do justice to this discussion. It's been really, really interesting. I think what I want to say... sorry? Sorry. I think what I want to say about my wish to see men standing up and making this analysis and critique of masculinity and the way it's exploited for militarism and war, as well as for other things, is not that I'm hoping an organisation like the Peace Assembly will be nice men, nice people, and it's to do with equality, and they shouldn't all be at the top, and it would be better if there was co-presidents and so on, to be a kind of responsive to feminists. That is not the main thing. For me, the main thing is we will not end war unless we actually transform the way we live gender. Peace assemblies simply cannot do their job. They are not going to achieve their aims unless we do that. So it's not an optional extra. That's what I mean by causality, really. But I also wanted to say that I actually came into the story of Turkey and militarism way back, and I don't know when it would be, maybe the late 90s, when there were some wonderful stories that I learned about gay men who were conscientious objectors, who actually used masculinity as an issue in their resistance. Didn't some of them go and unload a truckload of rotten apples outside the Ministry of Defence because gay men have been called rotten apples in the barrel or something like that? It sounded to me that in those days there were men who were actually taking masculinity and saying, do not exploit my masculinity for militarism and war. And that it made a very transformative kind of struggle, a very exciting struggle that some of us in other countries were able to learn from. The last question. I think what you said was an interesting statement, but I don't think I have to comment on it. It's enormous. It is always enormously stimulating for me to be in Turkey or to read about Turkey. I think everything that you, I think the particular problems that you face in your society are kind of exemplary problems that other countries can learn a lot from, and you have wonderfully vibrant movements. So for me, it's just a tremendous privilege to be here. I just wish that the tables had been turned more today so that I was more in a listening role and you were more in a speaking role. But thank you very, very much for inviting me. I have enjoyed it a lot.
Evet, biz Cynthia'ya çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Burada bizimle beraber olduğu için ve bu 2 saati çok hasta olmasına rağmen bizimle harcadığı için, dikkatle dinleyip yanıtladığı için bizi. Hepinize öğleden sonra tekrar burada görmek üzere iyi aralar, iyi dinlenmeler diliyoruz.